Thank you. This is for all the panel, but I'm going to start with you, Mr. Volk. I want to go back to the PFAS circle liability issue. You've all three addressed it, and I appreciate it. But as the chairman just said, repetition is good. Circle liability creates a significant risk for passive receivers. In other words, you didn't create it, but it comes into your water system. Often, you're required to receive or treat PFAS due to state or federal regulations. Water and wastewater utilities are particularly vulnerable to circle liabilities due to the essential and growing role in receiving and filtering PFAS. I believe in North Carolina, you said you just 43 systems had just installed carbon systems. There are treatment, as you mentioned, treatment technologies that can remove it, and it gets in granulated carbon filters. But it has to be transported then and disposed of used filters as you put new filters in. Wastewater utilities must contend with both industrial and residential contributors of PFAS upstream, the latter of which poses unique challenges due to the prevalence, as we talked, of PFAS in many consumer products. My questions are, can you elaborate on the risks and costs associated with transporting and disposing of PFAS-contaminated materials? And does circular liability impact your ability to manage these byproducts effectively without fear of severe legal challenges? If the EPA is requiring you to provide PFAS-free drinking and wastewater, are you kind of caught between a rock and a hard place? Mr. Volk.
Senator, great questions. A lot of these are on the minds of not only the small and rural systems in North Dakota, but across the nation. You know, there's a lot of unknowns with, especially in our state, with what the extent of the PFAS is, and then if you find it, what do you do with it? And then if you're told you need to dispose of it, where do I dispose of it? How much is it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? If it's the ratepayer, like we've already talked in the short time, we're already strapped, razor-thin budgets. That's where being exempt from the liability would be an extreme help to water systems, where they're, just like you said, the passive receiver. They didn't profit from the PFAS, but now they're responsible for that, exactly. And you know,
have you tested your water systems in North Carolina?
Yeah, Senator, they have done a couple years of testing. North Dakota, we've been lucky, knock on wood, that it's come back with very few positives across the state.
Okay, Ms. Powell, would you respond to that? You mentioned it in your statement, but I'd just like to reinforce it, please.
It's just like turning the mute button on Teams. I keep forgetting. Yes, I mentioned it in my statement that we have been, we initiated some looking at alternatives to deal with PFAS in drinking water. While we have done voluntary testing, and it shows that our levels are low, and that we would be under the MCL that has been proposed by EPA, we have seen an anomaly in the data that showed a spike that could potentially mean that we could be out of compliance in the future. So that's why I mentioned financial compliance and operational risks associated with not only drinking water, but also wastewater. We have to understand what will happen there, and biosolids. So on the drinking water side, our estimates now are upwards of $1 billion to be able to address PFAS in drinking water. And just in terms of biosolids, the Piscataway Bioenergy Facility project, where we have received funding from the state, that project is upwards of $270 million, the single largest investment that we have made as a utility. And it's supposed to be a positive one to take our biosolids to a Class A to allow us to better manage biosolids. That investment stands to be threatened should we have to address PFAS and biosolids. So it's important that water and wastewater utilities have the protections from CERCLA and from liability.
Secretary Bowser, you have some experience with this, obviously with some of your systems already doing the carbon filters. What kind of liability issues are they having, or would they have if we didn't specifically exempt them from transporting and trying to destroy, managing? Once you catch it, it doesn't go away. What are you going to do with it?
Senator Capito, thank you for that question. There's two large systems that we have that, as you mentioned, are dealing with this. One is installed a reverse osmosis system, the other a carbon filtration system, granular activated carbon system. With the carbon system, one of the things that we worry about is we know that there's air transport of PFAS as well, and so as it gets refreshed, it gets basically heated up. There's a lot we still need to learn about, are we putting it back into the air where it essentially continues a cycle? So I think that points to a need for some research and development to help us as we are tackling these issues. As it relates to CERCLA, I think, again, it's a really worthy conversation to have, to take a look at all the case law surrounding CERCLA, having everybody around a table to say, where are the unintended consequences and how do we avoid unintended consequences so we don't overburden our ratepayers?
Thank you. Thank you.